I can still appreciate Endless Nameless because as bad a place as I was in my life, the escapism was so great that it made this cacophonous row of intent. And I still think that it was one of the best versions that I've ever done of getting that out there to you that I've ever done. My fucking bite. Great thing about living in the countryside is it's fucking beautiful, but there's flies. And I live next to lakes, and there's flies. And this, especially this time of year, when it gets into summer, it's going to get even worse. But there's flies everywhere. I love the fucking taste. But the weird thing is, they start going off you. I think you must develop a countryness where they just go, oh, it's him again. But when I get any visitors from the city, especially London, they love the taste of Londoners. So if I get my son from London here, he gets devoured by the flies. And it's funny, I found one little part of the lake, which is this little beach looking thing. It's full of big stones, and then there's this big stone in the middle that's like the throne stone. Oh yeah, actually I've written a new song about it that's we're going to include in the next album called Spider Beach. And this beach is just full of spiders. Now, I used to have the worst arachnophobia in the world. We were just talking about this, me and producer Phil, before we went on. And I used to have the worst arachnophobia in the world. And he was talking about a job he used to do. He had arachnophobia, and this job entailed having loads of spiders around him. Once you're doing something, you stop being scared of them. And there's a line in there that says, fear disappears in action. And that's exactly why I wrote a song about Spider Beach, because it's the place I find myself most relaxed and most in the moment. And I think it's because I'm forced to be in the moment and not just drift off into a negative frame of mind, because you're always aware that these little things that you're supposed to hate but are having the opposite effect. The great thing about Spider Beach, there's no fucking flies on Spider Beach. So yeah, you don't get bitten there. This one's from Ad Brearley. Ad Brearley, that's a fucking Yorkshire name. If ever I was, please tell me you're from Yorkshire, Ad. Missed the UK tour earlier. Admittedly, wasn't sold on the new album, or a little on the new lineup either. A fair few listens later, and it finally clicked. So much so, I've got tickets to the lead show. That's going to be on Saturday, so it'll be after you get to hear this. But you loved it, didn't you? You fucking loved the new band. You can't not love the new band because it's just a really, really good rock band. And there's not many really, really good rock bands. And admittedly, the last lineup of the Wildhearts was great, but it wasn't a classic rock band. We used to get people going like, oh, I liked it. Oh, it's a bit noisy for me. Oh, it's a bit too punk or a bit this or that. Not comparing them on virtues or merits, just saying that this one is definitely a bit more of this. It's fucking great. And I'm so proud of the guys and Carol, girl, for rising up to the occasion so well. We've done relatively few gigs, and it really is already fully locked in. So you fucking loved that gig. I know you did, Ad. Is there a time in the studio, either solo or the Wildhearts, where you've thought this album just isn't going to work, only for you to click with it eventually? No. I have written albums that haven't clicked with and haven't recorded them. I wrote an album when I first moved to York, and I was going through this really weird transitional period between partners and all this fucking mad stuff. The Wildhearts getting back together. And I wrote this album, and I liked it at the time. And we were going to go in and record it. And I was just like, I'm just not into it. And I never did it. So if I'm going to be into an album enough to record it, it's getting released. There's albums now that I listen back to and don't find much to vibe with. But that's only because of where I am now and not the value of doing it at the time. And a lot of the times, as an artist, making albums isn't about what you think. Now, I don't mean that in any way disrespectful, but it's to keep you sane. It's to enable you to do something, just to be creative and be busy. A lot of the time when you're going to make an album, it's just for the release and the experience of being creative, not about how people are going to like it or how it's going to sell or anything like that. I've never made an album that I haven't clicked with because it's given me solace and a sense of purpose. I think they're all important. As far as I'm concerned, they're all important because without them, things might have went really squirrely and skew-whiff and in places that I definitely should have avoided. So I think all the albums have been really invaluable, and I like them all for different reasons, but mainly because they give me an outlet to be creative. And I really appreciate you lot for letting me do that, for enabling me financially to do that, and often supporting albums that you're not even going to hear. And thankfully you like them, but still, it's a massive ask and a massive risk on your end. And I just got to fucking thank you. And I know I make a big deal about thanking you all the time. And fuck you, I'll thank you as many times as I want. So yeah, I haven't. JF from Patreon. If you could have scored a Dario Argento and a Lucio Fulci film, which one would they be? I can only say my favourite ones. My favourite Dario Argento movie is Deep Red. And because it was scored by Goblin, or as I found out later, Goblins. They're not called Goblin, they're called Goblins. But it was pretty much a rock soundtrack, a kind of weird 70s style rock soundtrack for Deep Red. Dum dum da da dum da dum da 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 dum dum. If you heard it away from the movie, you could have put that in a comedy and it would have worked. So yeah, I would have liked to have done that one. I would have made that nice and instrumental. I would have loved to have scored Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. Yeah, I do know what it would have been. It would have been a lot of strings on that lovely Discord that I used to hear with Hammer. Me and Jim Pinder, producer, was talking about this Hammer movies. I'd watched a Hammer documentary and the music was fucking amazing. Way better than you remember Hammer movie music being. So I went and bought a Hammer soundtrack movie and realised that it's so effective because when you listen to it separately, it just doesn't make much sense. There's just a lot of notes, fucking genius composers, but they create tension or they dissipate tension based on the notes and the conjunction with each other. So if you have a tone and a semitone, that discord is going to make more tension than if you have two notes a tone apart, which will still make tension, but almost like a relief of tension. Really fascinating stuff. So yeah, I would have loved to have seen what I could have done orchestrally with Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. So yeah, that was a good question. So thank you, JF from Patreon. This one is from Paul Phelan. And he asks, Ginger, really enjoying the podcast, being a fan of your music from Earth Versus to today. You liar, you don't look that old. I seem to remember a mutual appreciation between yourself and Peter Hook on Twitter a while back. Would you like to work with Peter on a project in the future? What's your opinions on Manchester's music from Buzzcocks to today? Good one. I love Peter Hook. Obviously, I'm at the age where, Joy Division were a big thing, and Peter Hook very much so. In fact, I thought Peter Hook was as important as Ian Curtis in the way that they were perceived. That cold, weird bass style that he had was that was the sound of that. Very industrial for the time. Would I work with him? I don't see why. I can't even see myself wanting to work with another bass player now that John Poole's back in the picture, because he just does everything that anyone would do. But to be honest, I'm not that interested in working with anyone anymore. There was a time where I used to have a bucket list of people I wanted to work with, and I actually did work with them, or I just stopped being that kind of person and just enjoying what I was creating myself. Not that I don't think they would bring stuff to the table. Obviously they would. I'm not interested in seeing what they would bring to the table. No disrespect at all, man. I've just got to the point where I'm comfortable in myself and I don't really want to work with anyone else. What's my opinion on the Manchester music scene? Oh, man, well, I fucking loved Buzzcocks. First time I ever heard Buzzcocks, instant love. I think it was actually, have you ever fallen in love with someone? In practice, you shouldn't have. In a record shop, and I remember exactly where I was. It was a record shop in Newcastle, and this song came on, and by the first chorus, I ran to the desk and was like, who is this? Who is this? And it was, it's this band, the Buzzcocks. And I went out and bought, it was Singles Going Steady. That one, all Love Bites, one of them I bought, and it floored me. I've always been fascinated by the Manchester scene, and I love Manchester because it took all of the fucking credit and the necessity away from London. Because when I was a kid, you had to move to that London, otherwise you couldn't make music. And then gradually it went, you can make music fucking anywhere. And Manchester became obviously one of the biggest proponents of that point. Manchester music scene's always been brilliant. I loved the fucking acid house scene, which was largely invented in fucking Manchester. I liked Happy Mondays, but I loved Black Grape. fucking loved Black Grape. There's tons of Manchester bands I can't even think of at the moment. I can't even think of all the Manchester bands I like, and as soon as this podcast's over, all I'll think about for the rest of the day is fucking Manchester bands I didn't mention. Like everyone else who was around in the early 90s, and there was nothing going on in the early 90s, you know, it was pretty fucking boring. And then Oasis came out, and the first time you heard that album, Definitely Maybe, you were just like, the fucking North will rise again. And it was just that scene, that attitude, that fucking Hacienda vibe, the Stone Roses vibe, the Happy Mondays vibe, that kind of caustic, fucking bitter, but very warm thing that no one else really has been that good at doing, apart from Glasgow, obviously very, very big at it. But even in Newcastle, there was a want to have a sheen, you know, we wanted to make things appealing, where it seemed in Manchester, they couldn't have given a fuck if you liked it or not. And that's always been a strain in the music of Manchester that I've always really loved. It appeals to my punk aesthetic very much. I fucking love Manchester music, and every time someone mentions a new band, I'm always like, are they British? Yeah. Oh, they're from Manchester or Glasgow or somewhere northern. Nah, they're from fucking London. Okay, here we go. And it puts me off a little bit if people are from London, but it tends to be, no, they're from Canada. Because every band I like seems to be from fucking Canada. I don't know what's going on, but Canada are putting something in the water because it makes great fucking indie pop. Anyway, I digress. I love Manchester music, and I fucking love the vibe of Manchester. I love playing Manchester. We've always done great in Manchester, and we still continue to do, and I fucking absolutely love Manchester. Kevin Reynolds asked, what the fuck is Zomboid checking for white spots all about? Oh, Kevin. Right. Checking for white spots is a reference to crackheads, of which I was at the time. And the thing about crack is it doesn't last very long. You don't have any left in the morning. Let's put it that way. You get as big a rock as you can afford, and you think it's going to last me for ages, and it never does. It fucking time stops, and all of a sudden you've got no crack left. What do? You go searching on the carpet for anything white that looks a bit like a crack rock. And I've smoked probably as much bread and as much polystyrene as I have crack. Not true, I've smoked way more crack, but I've smoked an awful lot more polystyrene than you should, and you don't know how much polystyrene is on your floor or how much bread you drop until you're a crackhead and you end up smoking it. And oh my god, the disappointment of running out of drugs is further enhanced by smoking something that isn't even drugs, and it's just a disappointment. Oh, it's crushing. So yeah, that's what checking out for white spots. Anyone who's ever had a crack period of their life knows exactly what it is. And as far as you're concerned, Kevin, you will never know, because you fucking don't want to touch that stuff, because it's fairly moreish and not very good for you, and it steals all the money out your bank, and in a lot of cases people's teeth. I'm lucky that I've kept mine, as fucked up as they are over the years of singing into microphones and getting them bashed to fuck. But one day I'm going to meet someone who's a dentist and is going to fix them for me, and that's what I believe. By the way, I don't know if I've said it before, I love Phil, producer, I love this fucking thing. If you asking me questions, I will never read off a piece of paper again. Ken Bryant, some high-profile writers have said that because they wrote so much of their best stuff while inebriated or high, they became scared to write while sober and were surprised to eventually learn that they could still write bangers while sober. Has that scenario ever been a thing for you at any stage of your journey? I think I've mentioned this earlier. I can write in any state. I can write sober, I can write on drugs, I can write pissed. Some of your favourite stuff of mine has been when I've been out of my fucking tree. Some of my favourite stuff has been when I've been sober. It doesn't matter. Like I've said before, as long as the inspiration, as long as you're in a place of inspiration, whether you're inspired by nature or inspired by the fact that you've got a new drug dealer who only lives around the corner, that inspiration is there, and it's a case of just plucking the ideas out. So obviously good writers can write in a state of inebriation. And that's why people think, if it wasn't for drugs, you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have Sergeant Pepper's. Well, you you would have had an album instead of Sgt. Pepper's. Cocaine, it made so many great albums. Well, it still would have made great albums by great people, but they wouldn't have sounded as tinny as they do today. A lot of the time, drugs can give you a freedom, and alcohol can give you a freedom where the performance is a little bit more freewheeling. You can get a bit more comfortable in the studio, whereas a lot of people will probably clam up. I think they call it green light fever, even though the light's usually red, ironically, when you've got to record, where you just clam up. You think, oh, this is going to be on a record for the rest of the time. Oh. Alcohol can help there, but for the most part, it makes no fucking difference. If you're a good writer or a good player or a good producer, you can, bring your A game sober or pissed or whatever. So yeah, it never made any difference to me. I've had a great time in the studio. Absolutely mashed with the Wildhearts or with Mutation or various other things. I've had a great time being sober and really focused, and and never the twain shall meet. I don't obviously drink in the studio now anymore, although I still drink. I don't drink in the studio because I value every second of my life now, and I want everything that I put down to be in as much control as I can, even if I do look back at it and think, oh, it's a bit sterile. I still like the performance idea. The thing I hate more than anything is the idea of getting on stage pissed. Now, I don't know, we were talking about bands who rehearse too much earlier on, and I got a funny feeling that people who drink a lot on stage are people that are over-rehearsed, because they don't want to live in the moment. It's fucking horrible being pissed on stage. Don't you agree, Phil?
Absolutely.
It's fucking horrible being on stage pissed because you're out of control. And not having control on stage is my biggest fear, because you're being watched. You're out of control, you're naked, you're vulnerable, and you're being watched by a load of people. I just can't go on there and be a clown and say that I enjoyed it. I can play a gig and feel like it was shit, but at least I tried my best. At least I was sober. And if anyone says that was shit, yeah, I did try my best. If I was pissed out my head, I can't say that. I'm going, well, you don't even deserve my sobriety. I drank a bottle of vodka. I've been in bands before with people that claim to have been sober, and I've seen them drink the best part of a bottle of vodka before they went on stage. And that's kind of one of those things where it's a confidence thing. Certainly doesn't enhance your playing. It probably just gives you the balls to get on stage in the first place. And I get it. I don't suffer from that, though. I want to get on stage and I want to make a good job of it. Whatever stage of learning I am at an instrument. When I couldn't play the guitar, I still wanted to learn on stage. When I couldn't sing, and a lot of you lot fucking saw the gigs where I couldn't sing, because I learned to sing on stage with the Wildhearts in front of people. I preferred to prove it on the pitch, to learn everything in front of people, so it's not a cheap lesson. It sticks with you. Everything that you learn sticks with you, because if you're shit in front of people, that fucking lesson's going to stick with you. Now, I don't think there's that much difference in being drunk or being sober. It's all down to the personality and the circumstances. But at the end of the day, if you are good, you can do it drunk or sober. The next question is from Sean Seymour, who asks, what are your thoughts on John Lennon? Funny, because I've just watched a John Lennon and Yoko Ono documentary, so he's on my mind as a songwriter and a musician. So what did you think about the song Now and Then that was released in 23 using a demo John Lennon had recorded in the late 70s and was enhanced using AI and finished by Paul and Ringo? Well, as I've already said, Sean, I think AI doesn't make very good music, and I thought that was dog shit. To use one of producer Phil's phrases, it was a dog egg. I thought it was crap. It was crap. A good attempt. If it had been a decent song, it probably would have been good and worthy of being called the Beatles, because, like it or not, the Beatles aren't all here, but if something great came out, if Paul McCartney put something great out and called it the Beatles, and it stood up to the legacy of the Beatles, I'd be okay with that. That was fucking rubbish, that song. What do I think of John Lennon? He was a very, very confused character. I'm not sure John Lennon was very aware of who he was, which is why I identify with him. Fortunately for him, he was very famous, and he didn't know who he was. So he was led in directions that became big things, like going into bed for peace, or climbing into a bag, or playing these concerts that were a bit misjudged or pointless, or devoting money. You used to fund or partly fund the IRA, which you can't do if you're skint, which I'm lucky that I have been for most of my life. Not skin. I've always made I've always made a living, but I haven't had enough to fund political parties. Although I was a paid-up member of the fucking Labour Party, which seems weird now, considering how shit the Labour Party or how much I hate politics. I digress, which I haven't wanted to do. I like John Lennon as a person because he was vulnerable and he showed his vulnerability, and he was obviously very, very steered by Yoko. So she was just like, John, we're on mung beans. I'm on mung beans. John, we're doing a concert for a cause that you have no interest in whatsoever. Yeah, I'm doing it. I don't think he did any of those things for his personal gain, which I like about him. But I don't think he also had a lot of heart in what he was doing. The pitfalls of success. I mean, I think John Lennon's whole thing was the pitfalls of success, because he was referred to, I think in probably one review, as the Fat Beatle. And apparently this stuck to him. I've read a lot of John Lennon books and saw all of the documentaries on him. And I think being called the Fat Beatle stuck to him. So he was obsessed with his weight. And when he was killed, he was on a diet mostly of tea and I think apples and stuff like that. But he was so weak that I read an interview with the ambulance people that were taking him from the scene. And they were saying, look, John, it looks really bad, but it's not. All the bullets missed your vital organs, you're going to be all right. And as he was saying this, John Lennon died in his arms. And I remember the ambulance man saying it was really weird because these weren't wounds that killed someone. The fact that he was so weak is what killed him, not the gunshot, which is a weird thing to think about, really. I don't want to go down that fucking path because there's nothing good there. But the fact that he was obsessed with this review and he had enough money. It's a bit like now when you see these people, Ozempic I think is a new one. And there's another one I was looking at the other day where people are obsessed with the physical. But instead of just working to lose weight, I mean, I've done a lot of work to lose weight. And the upshot is you lose weight and you get really healthy and fit. John Lennon did it in a way that a rich person can afford to do.